Anthony Grassi for D3 Ticker here at the 2025 NCAA Convention. Happy to sit down for another small college conversation with Director of Athletics at Maryville College, Andrew Wu. Andrew, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So as we sit here right now, you are still kind of early in your tenure at Maryville.
Much so.
What has the transition process been like so far?
The transition has been frantic and fun, interesting, challenging to navigate the different dynamics, coming on as an interim with possibly interest in staying permanently and getting to know the community and coming in the way I came in, which was partially through a relationship and friendship that I had with the president of the college. It's a college that I have been aware of for a long time and kept up with. President Coker would always send me texts with the championship rings that Maryville was winning and a little bit of gloating. But getting in and really getting a feel for the place and figuring out like this is really something I want to do and uproot the family. Going from Maryville to Tennessee or Maryland to Tennessee, it's a tough decision. But clearly, I've kind of fallen in love with the place and the people and lots of opportunities, lots of challenges. And we're kind of starting to tackle them now that it is official that I'm sticking around.
Yeah, the move from permanent athletic director to interim athletic director, I imagine, was maybe not the easiest sell at times. But what was it?
It wasn't as hard as you might think.
Okay.
I mean, I think.
I guess as an outsider, I should say. Yeah.
No, I mean, I had been AD at Goucher for 5 years, and I had always kind of viewed my tenure at Goucher either as I'm going to be here for 40 years or I'm going to be here for 5 to 7. Probably not really much of an in between. As I mentioned, knowing Dr. Coker at Maryville, he was my supervisor at Goucher. When he came down, I'll say here because we're pretty close to Maryville right now. We had always kind of talked about maybe at some point in the future if there was an opportunity of reuniting, and so when this opportunity came up as a possibility, and the timing was very challenging because it basically all happened in early August. As those conversations happened, it turned into a really good opportunity for me to and for Maryville to test out the waters and for me to be able to make a decision if this was something I wanted to do permanently, and for the college to get a feel for me and figure out if this is the person they want leading the department. And that was actually really appealing to me. And at a time where moving on kind of made a little bit of sense and taking that leap worked out. I think Dr. Coker was big on that. Obviously, the department itself and the competitive success that they've had and growth over the last several years, and like I said before, opportunity for growth. There's some really awesome projects that are on the horizon, and we just need to raise a little money and tap some people who maybe haven't been tapped yet.
How do you think about maybe what are some of those projects that you thought through?
There's several.
Okay.
I think anybody looking at what we have going on would look at us and say, like, our football stadium could probably use an update. We have added some facilities and kind of this lower annex for athletics, and we could really use a support facility down there for those. Our like most small Division III colleges, our main building has some deferred maintenance and some age, and we would love to update some spaces in there. But we've done some small things, and a lot of those kind of, $100,000 to $250,000 projects that make a big difference for students aren't necessarily your $5 to $10 million splashes, but make a big difference for the student experience. Are on our radar. We just wrapped up, actually right as we speak. Our team is going to be wrapping up our new softball batting cage, which for our softball team is just going to be transformational for their experience and pride with what they're doing.
How did you kind of handle that transition process from interim into the permanent position? And maybe, well, I guess we'll start there.
Yeah, it was funny. I got a lot of, at Maryville, like, is this really interim? Are you sticking around? Like, everybody knows that I have a strong relationship with the president, and he and I are friends, and he's a mentor of mine. And so coming down first day was, okay, what's really the deal here? And we were very practiced on what our messaging was going to be, and it was genuine, honest messaging that we weren't really sure yet. This was a very genuine interim role, and I didn't know if I was going to put my hat in the ring, and obviously the college didn't know what they were going to see or get out of me. But there was some disbelief. There was some, yeah, you got to say that you're practiced on that message type stuff. But it was genuine, and I think coming into the situation now, looking back, it really was perfect because, like I said before, to be able to make a huge decision like this and spend more than a day and a half, 2 days on campus doing an interview, and having the opportunity to spend months on campus, really get to know the people, the whole community, within the college and the greater Glenn County community. It was a fantastic opportunity to be able to do that and then make a decision. So it was interesting. There was some disbelief. There was some, are you really going to stay or really not going to stay? What's going on here? But overall, I think one of the challenges was decision making, and knowing, especially after a little bit of time, I do love this place. I do see myself here, but not necessarily wanting to make some bigger decisions or put some visions in place that would be longer term, because I was not yet the permanent athletic director. So, I hated, and I very consciously avoided the whole, like, we're going to stay afloat, we're going to tread water during this time as an interim. I'm going to keep the train moving. And that's part of the reason I wanted to do, the batting cage project. I wanted to, whether it was an interim situation or not, I wanted to make sure something was accomplished during the 3.5 months or so that I was there, and to show people that, I'm not just going to show up to the office every day and, sign expense reports and things like that, and make sure that, things aren't falling apart. I want to make sure we're moving forward, even if it's just for a few months.
What maybe some intentional things, some relationships you started to build as an interim, with the thought that I'm going to use this time as a real test to see if I want to be here?
Yeah. Certainly all of cabinet. So
Okay.
Thankfully, another appealing thing about this position is it sits on cabinet, which is something I did not have at my previous institution, and makes a big difference. And so building all of those relationships, understanding what the enrollment related goals were going to be and expectations, understanding, what are my relationships with facilities, what are my relationships with the academic side, who are the people, does it seem like these relationships are going to be positive and mutually respectful, and the college as a whole understands and prioritizes athletics. And I can't say enough about how much I felt that during my time as interim, that everyone on that cabinet understood athletics needs to be a strategic priority for us. And we felt that, there were times we needed to make some decisions or invest in certain things. The support was fantastic, and things like that. When you're making a decision on whether or not you want to stay at a place and continue to grow a place, huge to be able to have that opportunity to be like, you can say in an interview that you understand athletics and care about it, but if I come to you and say I need X amount of money, or I need this support, or maybe a change to policy, and there's people agree and support and understand that, that's a whole different story, which makes, again, the whole situation kind of ideal.
How did you go about making that decision? Well, I guess a few different decisions. The decision, we talked about the decision to join Maryville, but the decision to say, this is where I want to be, and ultimately apply for the permanent role. Who did you have, like, a criteria, a rubric? Who did you involve in that conversation?
Not really a
personal,
rubric.
Professional side of it.
I'm not that organized, unfortunately. I think, I wanted to make sure that, especially something I'm sure we're going to talk about, the transition to SAA, I wanted to make sure that the college understood what was required to come in strong into a very strong conference. And, I think when I first started, there was a little bit of trepidation. We're one of the stronger institutions in our current conference as far as competitive outcomes, and we're going to a tougher one. So, natural for coaches to say, I feel pretty good about making the postseason, winning championships, making the national tournament. Here in the SAA, it's going to be a little bit tougher. So why is this a good thing? So, really understanding that messaging, understanding from the institution, do we know what that's going to take from a resource standpoint, from, an investment standpoint, facilities, prioritizing fundraising initiatives, making sure that all of our academic priorities and policies are supportive of student athletes. And so that was huge for me to make sure. Like, I know Dr. Coker very well. I know how he feels about athletics at a small college. I didn't know as much about the board, the rest of the cabinet. How do we feel about going into this new conference and continuing to move the athletic program forward? So that was number one for me. Am I going to be set up to succeed? I don't want to come in 3-4 years of really positive progress, take us into a new conference, and suddenly we're no longer winning championships.
Yeah.
We're no longer getting NCAA berths. So feeling good about that was number one. Obviously, from a personal standpoint, wife and kids, being somewhere where I think we can all be happy. So again, having the opportunity to really get to know the community was huge. And I wanted to get to know the staff. How do I feel about the staff within the athletic department, like the quality of the coaches we have? And, I couldn't have been happier from day one with the quality of the people we have. They're doing things for the right reasons. We're really doing a good job, I think, of challenging our student athletes to be better and be the best version of themselves and all of that. So just feeling good kind of all around and feeling positive that we had the support to continue what my vision for the department would be.
What's been the biggest surprise since joining Maryville?
Biggest surprise. I hate to go back. The unanimous support of athletics, the really strong support from the board, how even as an interim, and this answers your last question a little bit too, but how much I felt embraced by, obviously the cabinet, internally in the athletic department, by the students, by the board, by the greater community. It was just a really, really positive fall to feel that not only is there pretty strong alignment from each stakeholder about what the direction of athletics should be, but personally, there was really, people were happy that I was there. My first day, people were thanking me for showing up and excited. I had faculty coming up saying they had read my credentials and were excited about this, that, or the other. And so the environment was fantastic. And feeling like the athletic director, truly is a leader on campus and viewed that way universally. Wasn't entirely surprising because I got a little bit of the heads up from Dr. Coker, but the reality of that actually happening was a little bit surprising. So I would definitely say the embracing of athletics and myself.
You mentioned that, so the embrace from all different constituents. I'm curious how you started kind of day one within the department.
Yeah.
Obviously, the leadership change is not easy really for anybody.
Yeah.
But if you're a coach, if you're an administrator, if you're an assistant, if you're a student athlete, the change at the top kind of just creates some unease.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your day one thought of, okay, we're going to try to, here's my approach to kind of cool everybody off a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget the first meeting. I walk in and I scheduled this meeting at 8:30 in the morning because we had a big community gathering that morning. And I walk into our Garnet room and all the coaches are there and they're looking at me like, okay, what do we got? Because it had been a week and a half from even the seedling of this happening and then me showing up on campus. So, it was very important to me to just come in, tell them what I will, give them the script of, this truly is interim for now, but we will potentially be seeing how this all turns out. Telling them kind of how I envisioned the semester going. And there was honestly, there was a lot of blank stares because it was a situation where we're in the middle of August. The student athletes were already back by the time I showed up to campus. We were already doing what we needed to do to get ready for the year. and now I'm showing up. And what's the deal with this guy? He knows our president. Do I really know what I'm doing? And to be completely frank, coming from an institution that didn't have the same competitive success that Maryville was having, I think for any coach, is this guy a winner?
Right.
And so, I think from the get-go, like any leader, you're putting the one-on-one time in, you're showing some personality, you're being vulnerable a little bit. And hopefully I did a good job doing that. But like I said, I can't say enough about the staff we have, including the administrative staff who, when a new AD comes in August and doesn't have the time to make August happen, they made that happen. They made move-in happen. They made preseason happen. And I think they did it in a way that student athletes didn't feel it, which is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. So we've talked a bunch about the transition to the SAA with football and women's golf joining this upcoming year, followed by the entire athletic department come 26. What structural changes or changes across the athletic department are you thinking about implementing as you gear up for that change?
We've done a few things here and there. I think we've changed structurally our football staffing, added a little bit more capacity, added some more capacity on the strength and conditioning end. From a staffing perspective, I talk pretty openly about this. I think administratively we are adequately staffed, which is not always the case. I even hesitate to say it. Don't want it coming back on me, but we're adequately staffed, and partially because we got really good people. So, I think a few things that we are looking at with the head coaching structure is just kind of like where is their time spent? It's very important for us to do a better job fundraising, generating revenue from alternative sources. And anytime you tell coaches, hey, we got to focus on fundraising, I think a lot of coaches are saying, well, I don't want to spend all my time fundraising. So making sure we're framing that. But, I think more so than fundraising, we all need to do a better job of engaging our alums. We have a very rich alumni base who cares about the college. And we haven't done, I think, as well as we could have been in making sure that they're engaged, they care, they're up to date, they're hearing the stories of our current students and what's going on. So setting some standards there and things like that. But as far as major staff structural changes, there are some wants out there for sure. But no, I think we're pretty okay. And we've looked at, the staffing comps with the other schools in the SAA, and we're pretty okay.
How do you think, as somebody who sat in the chair before, how do you think your head coaches should be balancing their time between the actual responsibilities as a head coach with the need for fundraising?
Yeah. I mean,
and maybe it varies by sport, maybe it varies by the individual based on their background, maybe how ingrained they are with the culture. I imagine a first-year coach is a lot different than a coach who's been there for a decade and a half, those kind of things.
Yeah, all those factors certainly, and our programs have different access to different quality resources. So, I would say our basketball programs are probably, basketball and baseball are the best resource as far as what they have going on, the quality of the facilities, everything like that. We've got a few programs who don't have that luxury. But my take with coaches being involved in fundraising is very much on the side of, if we have an opportunity to either do a campaign, to go to a potential significant donor, and make an ask, I don't want them to have not heard from anybody in a decade. So, making sure that coaches are the ones doing that communication in a way that emphasizes what's going on, who our students are, like I said before, what a couple of their stories are. We're really excited about what's going on with this student athlete. Here's their story. Here's where they come from. Here's why they appreciate being at Maryville, and highlighting that stuff more than here's your monthly newsletter. Here was our record. Focusing more on the students, because that's what alums care about more than anything else, I think, is what are the students doing? What do they care about? What is the quality of their experience? And then pulling in coaches when necessary, especially if we have, potential major donors who played for that coach, and involving them in those conversations and making passionate, compelling cases for why supporting the athletic department is important.
I'll get you out of any of these last two bigger questions. First would be, what are some areas of focus that you have for Maryville moving forward
Yeah.
now that you're in the permanent chair?
Yep. Fundraising, revenue generation, certainly are things that I found myself talking about quite a bit with the board. We have some awesome facilities, and we have a few facilities that are a little bit behind our peers. So, making sure that we're doing the little things, and we're making sure that, if we have a repair that's necessary, we can afford to make that repair immediately. And also that we're thinking longer term about, there's some really good facilities in the SAA. And we do not want to be in a situation where we're in the lower tier of the facilities in our conference. So, really strategically addressing the athletics physical plan, what's most important, what's most feasible, where are our donors, what can we get done? Probably top of my list. And then, the other side of it is generating the revenue that we can generate, as far as doing a better job with sponsorships, rentals, and things like that. And then finally, I think one of my priorities, especially coming from a student affairs background, is making sure that the athletic director is known, is someone that the students see and appreciate the visibility of the athletic director. One of the luxuries that I had this semester was living on campus while my family was still up in Maryland. I had 3 meals a day in the dining hall. Sat with student athletes most every meal, unless I was so burnt out I had to get a to-go thing and just go straight upstairs. But it was really important to me that the student athletes know that I'm a member of their team and rooting for them, and I'm not just, signing papers and trying to raise money and supervising coaches. Like I'm out there with them, want to get to know them, and want to maintain those relationships as they graduate and move forward. So having that presence on campus is really top tier for me too.
Absolutely. Last big question is, as we sit here in Nashville at the NCAA convention, there's a lot of topics of conversation. There's a lot of areas of focus. I'm curious what one area of focus you have is and how you're thinking about tackling it specifically.
Yeah. So, I mean, the huge ones are certainly on everybody's minds, but I think the one that is most immediately on my mind is kind of understanding how Maryville could utilize the NIL landscape. Division III, obviously, something that's it's creeping its way in more and more. And Tennessee NIL laws are particularly permissive. And we have some resources in the state. Obviously, right up the road, UT does a lot of NIL. So, trying to make sure that we're investigating potential benefit of doing something on a much smaller scale, but doing something and seeing, every AD in the country would tell you, there are cases where you have some really important student athletes who are great community members who, at some point during their collegiate career might need $5 extra in order to stay. And it has nothing to do sometimes with sport. It has nothing to do with not loving the institution. It just comes down to a stark financial decision. And if you have that resource and you can hang on to those students, that's something that I think, responsibly have to look at if the opportunity is out there. And in the community we're in, I do think there's enough affinity for what's going on with the college and our athletic department that we might be able to do something.
Excellent. Andrew, thanks so much for joining me today. Best of luck as you get rolling with them.